All right. Seems seems like we are on. So it does seem like we are on in this first podcast, online podcast that I'm doing. I'm just doing a live stream because these are eventually going to be put onto the page that you can watch at a later time. But since it is more of a podcast format instead of a actual format of being a video, having to do editing and all that stuff, I figured today I was just going to do a podcast type of thing. So I'm thinking about doing these maybe every month, maybe every few weeks. I don't know. We'll kind of see how it goes, how it works, and whatnot. The main idea of this compared to a video is that a video is going to focus a lot more on, um, let's see, I'm going to turn up the volume on this, the gain a little bit. Is it showing that the volume is a little less? Okay, maybe this is a little bit better. Um okay. So these hopefully this works. Hopefully this isn't too bad. But anyway, um I'm doing these podcasts just because I want it to be kind of more of an informal type of video that I can do. Obviously, as you can see, the quality of it is absolute shit because I'm doing it from my web camera, which is supposed to be in HD, and I'm looking at the screen. It don't look too damn HD to me. But anyway, um, I'm going to be doing these podcasts that are mostly to be watched at a later time. But again, because they're in podcast format, I'm still going to do a live stream of them just in case anyone comes in and wants to chat or anything like that. Then yeah, they can do that. So anyway, in today's podcast, and please, two things before we continue. One, if you haven't subscribed and you like this, go ahead and subscribe. The only people who can put stuff in the chat during the podcast will be people who have been subscribed to the channel for 5 minutes or longer. And the second thing is, if you ever want to take lessons with me, you can just go to davesenglish.com and go to my website. Now, that is, when we do a lesson, it's just basically going to be this cam, listen to me like you are right now, and then we have the lesson that we do. So you're seeing it from the point of view of how I do a lesson. But anyway, today I want to talk about, I'm going to move this a little bit. Today I want to talk about, um, I really want to focus on accent. Now, I'm going to be doing a few videos about accents, or the American accent, I should say, over the next few weeks. I'm going to be doing a few videos about accent because I think accent is something that so many people just don't concentrate, or they concentrate too much on, and then they don't concentrate necessarily in the correct way. So I really want to focus today's podcast, I was going to just say video, but I guess it's a podcast, about how important an accent actually is. Um so I can't make out whether it's a stream or not. It is a stream. So hence the reason I can answer your question right away. Um anyways, so I wanted to talk about this difference with an accent because it's important to know why you're getting, or why you want to get an accent, because I've been looking at a lot of videos that say, how did I get an American accent? How did I get rid of my accent, or how did I get an American accent? Some are people who actually genuinely have been able to get rid of it. Others have not, and others are to the point of being absolutely absurd and ridiculous. And these are the videos I'm going to be making over the next few weeks about these accents that are just like the POC English. Again, this guy is the gift that keeps on giving. Honestly, seriously. So I am gonna be doing a video about one of his recent videos about how to get an American accent, yet he doesn't have anything like near an American accent. But let me ask you something when it comes to an American accent or accent reduction in general. The first question I want to ask you is, who are you trying to impress? Because that's what it comes down to, really. If your pronunciation is correct. And I, as a native speaker, can understand what you're saying word for word. And the ideas are clear and you're saying it grammatically correct and everything. Whether you have an American accent or Russian accent or a Chinese accent or anything like that, the pronunciation is correct. I know what you're saying. So the question then becomes, who are you trying to impress? Because it's not about trying to sound right, it's about impressing somebody. Now, if you're trying to impress yourself, then that could be something that I would say, it can be good for you. The problem is that when you try to impress yourself, you might not know if you actually have been able to reduce your accent or not. You do need some sort of feedback to get that idea. And this is where the problem with trying to impress yourself comes in. So, for example, I did a video about what's the channel called, English Fluency Journey, and talked about how the person in that, Anna, has been able to get a Midwest accent. They've been able to do that. And this is pretty much true. As a matter of fact, I made some remarks, and then somebody from Michigan, from Southeast Michigan, so the Detroit area, said, yes, she has what would be considered a Great Lakes Midwestern accent. Now, here's the thing: I had a lot of people from the Peanut Gallery who probably are not from the United States at all saying, no, she doesn't. I can hear some Ukrainian and Russian. I'm from there. I know what that accent sounds like. You probably don't know what that accent sounds like. Okay. So you're probably not in the best position to actually judge what people are, if somebody has an accent or not. You're not in the best position. So when all these people sit there and say, oh, she doesn't have an American accent, I can hear Ukrainian in her. No, she has a Midwestern Great Lakes American accent. If you don't think so, you're an idiot, or you just don't have the knowledge there to understand what this is. Okay. So judging yourself might give you false feedback as to whether you have been able to nail down an accent or not. Okay. So the first one is to impress yourself, but you still need feedback. Number two, the second one can be to impress friends. Okay, let's say you're at a party and you got a lot of people and you know English well, and you want to impress your friends when it comes to your English abilities. Okay. Um okay, at this point, I guess that's fine, but you're just trying to impress somebody. You're not necessarily trying to improve your English. You're like, oh, I'm going to go to impress my friends who also don't speak English, and I'm going to say something in what I perceive to be an American accent, which then they will perceive to be an American accent, even though it might not be, because I don't get the feedback to determine if something is or not. And when you try to impress your friends, you can do that, but that's more for your own ego. Okay, that isn't really for your ability to improve the way in which you speak. That is more geared toward building your own ego. And I wouldn't even say building your own self-confidence. That's just kind of going somewhere and using an American accent and then trying to use it at a party is just like a tool, I guess. So by impressing your friends, what do you gain out of that? I mean, you might gain something. You might gain something. Okay, it's whatever your motive is, I guess. That's the first thing. Um, Now, the third group of people you are trying to impress are native speakers, and you're not fooling us. Okay, and this is the problem I have with a lot of videos that I will be talking about over the next few weeks. And this is the problem I have. Okay, is that these videos will start off with, how did I learn how to speak with an American accent? Well, you don't have an American accent. That's the point. If you're trying to tell me you do, so for example, I was watching Veronica Marks, I think is her name, her channel, and she has a few videos about an American accent. Now, if she came up to me and says, hi, my name's Veronica, I'm from Tallahassee, I'm going to be like, no, you're not from Tallahassee. You're from another country. Okay. You're not fooling me. And the problem I have is that a lot of people who don't speak English, who don't speak it natively, they might not be able to differentiate whether Veronica is telling the truth or not as to her English or her American accent ability. Okay. She doesn't have it. There was another video I watched the other day that I'll be including in this. And the opening line was, "You might not know that English isn't my first language." Yes, I do. Okay. And the problem I have with these types of videos, and the reason why I want to talk about these types of videos, is that it's giving somebody confidence for whatever reason they want to have that confidence. But it's, which is fine, but it's also kind of a fake sale. Somebody saying that they have something. Okay, let me give an example. Let's say I want to learn how to play golf. Okay. I go to somebody who is perceived to be a professional. Now, doesn't necessarily have any qualifications or anything like that, but says he's a good golfer. He's a professional golfer. And even professional, that's very subjective. Did he go into one tournament one time and flop and made, 15 bucks? Technically, you're a professional golfer at that point. Now, if I, let's say, learn from a professional golfer, but I never played golf professionally, I'm not a professional golfer. And that also is not going to help me improve my golf. Okay, I'm not going to go to a professional golfer, get golfing skills and all that, then hit the greens and go up to somebody and say, "Yeah, I'm a professional golfer. I'm going to take you out. I'm getting a hole in one on this par three." Okay, it's, you're not going to fool anyone. And that's the case when it comes to people who are talking about having an American accent and selling you. And that's the problem I have. They're selling you on this fact that they have an American accent when somebody like me listens to them and says, I say, no, you don't have an American accent. You don't. Now, that bothers me. Now it's not just an accent reduction. I think accent reduction is the biggest snake oil sales of any of it. Okay. Um, it's about everything. So a lot of these channels like Lingua Marina and others will sit there and say, "Hey, I can help you with these. These are the words that Americans say. This is the way that Americans speak. This is the way that Americans live in a house that's $2 million when you're hanging out with all your friends from Russia." Ironically, okay? So, it's a lot of these videos that are geared towards English learners, like many of you are, that is not really giving you true advice. And that's what really grinds my gears when it comes to this. Yes, I know I'm using a lot of idioms and other things, and I usually don't. Idioms are something you'll see more in the south of the United States than you'll see in the north. But on the other hand, let's shift again. Let's go ahead and shift. When we talk about accents, there's a difference between accent and pronunciation. Okay. Now, I'm speaking with an American accent right now, speaking from a North Side Chicago, with a North Side Chicago accent. Now, if I just start saying, "Bazibo Luigi okay, still speaking with an American accent, but I'm speaking gobbledygook. Okay. I'm not making any sense whatsoever. So whether I have the accent or not, doesn't matter if you don't have the pronunciation, you don't know the grammar, and you don't know vocabulary, right? You can speak with an accent, but that's not going to make your ability to speak better. And this is where, and the problem I have is that a lot of these videos set these examples as to, if you don't hit this level, you have a problem, right? If you don't, I'm speaking, and okay, and this comes to the point too. Somebody will say, "I'm speaking with an American accent," which they're not. I can tell that they're not from the United States. Okay, they're not fooling me. They're not fooling anyone here, but they tell you that. And if it's just close enough, then you perceive it as okay, yes, then they're speaking with an accent. then they're the ones that go ahead and say, I'm going to sell you on this. Um, so yeah, so this becomes a problem. But again, accent is the thing you should be worrying least about because you again, you can say something in an American accent, but if your pronunciation is all wrong, I'll have no idea what you're talking about. But if you say it with a foreign accent, your pronunciation is spot on, which for me, many of my students that I interact with, that's the case. And this is kind of why I take issue with this particular thing, this accent reduction, because so many students, when I do my first lesson with them, one of the questions that I always ask them is, I say, what do you want to improve, or where do you think your deficiencies are, and where do you want to improve? None of them. I mean, very few of them. I guess I should say not none of them because some have. Very few of them say grammar, which is what I find is their number one mistake. Almost every one of them say that they want to have an American accent, okay, and pronunciation. And with most students, pronunciation is fine. It's not an issue. Um, However, they're so focused on accent that they're not focused on grammar. And I mentioned this in a video about the biggest mistake that people make when learning English is not focusing on grammar. Now, I don't think you need to get into the grammar books like here and just start delving into, what's the difference between a transitive and intransitive verb. I don't think you should. I think you should note the rules, but I don't think you should focus on memorizing the rules, which is another cancer that we have in the English learning and the English teaching community as well, which is one of the reasons I'm going to be making a video about both lingua marina and English with everyone and talk about how I think they're both causing problems when it comes to learning English because well, I'll leave it for that video. I'll talk about that in that video. But um the thing is about pronunciation. And you need to get away from this accent focus. And like I said, I watched POC English, and this guy is like, "Oh, I'm going to teach you how to have an American accent." And the guy doesn't even sound nearly like it. It's like, and all the advice that he gives, or most of it, I should say, is like really bad advice and not even there. But yet the guy nearly has 2 million subscribers, which means that like this guy has taken in nearly 2 million people to say, "Oh, that's right. Holy cow, this guy sounds just like he lives in like Salt Lake City or something." No, he doesn't. And this is a problem. So I'm gonna and then these podcasts are just gonna be kind of like little half-hour videos about my rants and ramblings of what's happening in the English teaching world. So it's not going to be like a formal structure or anything, but I would like to have a topic. I would like to have things to talk about. I'm going to just go to some of the few. I mean, I just decided to do this podcast like literally last night. I'm like, okay, I'm going to throw it up there, see what happens. And again, it's just a conversation with me. And again, I'll just do a plug for myself. If you want to take lessons with me, just go to davesenglish.com and you can do that there. Um, so yeah, hello from Poland. Hello. Recently found out that my great grandparents are from Poland from a DNA test. That's another story for another day, which is really, really interesting. But then I'm also, my family is from Slovakia. Hi, in my opinion, talking to a native speaker is the best option to learn foreign language, to learn a foreign language. My good friend introduced me to a word, whatchamacallit. I didn't even know such a word existed. And that's so that like that isn't necessarily a word, but that's just, what do you call it? Whatchamacallit or something like that's more just kind of a pronunciation. But I guess this goes technically that would be more slang. Okay, that would be a slang way of saying something. And and see, here's another problem I have with these sound like a native speaker things is that they will talk about idioms and slang and other things as if they are things that are used all the time in English. That's the problem I have with it. It's like, so you have the word whatchamacallit, and they say, oh, Americans say this instead of this. And then what happens is a lot of people who are learning English then overuse that for every single situation. And it sounds weird. It doesn't sound right. And this goes back to what I talked about as far as knowing about idioms. I did one of my original videos was about, stop using idioms in these cases. I find that a lot of people either overuse them or do not have the correct understanding of the context of when to use idioms. So that is a problem. And for me, most of the people who watch are B2 level and higher. And this is the reason why I speak the way that I do in my videos. I don't slow it down. I try not to be quiet or anything or go, hi, my name is Dave. I don't do that because I you're not going to encounter that when you come here. Okay, if you're going to go to the streets of Chicago, you want to go and you want to get an Italian beef, right? I'm going to tell you where the local Portillo's is because it's the best place to get a beef, but I'm going to say it to you like I say it to somebody else. And it's important for you to know that. So that's why I speak the way that I do. And if you think I'm going to slow it down, no, I'm not going to slow it down. Are you checking the messages left on your site? Yes, I have two that I need to catch up with. Um, the message system's really bad on there. Sometimes the notifications don't get 100% there. So I will get to those soon. Okay, so if you left a message, don't worry, I'll get back to it. Now I will say, I mean, not to be a dick, but this is my job. This is what I do. Chances are for people who are asking for free advice, I just don't do that. I offer lessons. If you ever want to take a lesson, please do so. Any advice that you have, you can look at the channel of what I've provided so far. But I'm unfortunately not in a position to get um to give free lessons because like the electricity I have coming from the light that I have coming from this light that requires electricity, electricity requires money to pay for the bill for the electricity. So, and this internet requires money. So, it would be nice if I could, but guess what? The world runs on money, so I can't give free things. But if you did have another question that wasn't about, can you give me free advice? I'll get to you as soon as possible. I know there are a few. And the reason why on my website, I don't want to put my website, I don't want to put my email address on there. I just put a form on there so that I don't get inundated with all of these, you know, hey, we can redesign your website. We can do your thumbnails. We could do whatever the hell I'm offering today. Okay. No, I don't want to be inundated with all those. So that's the reason why I got that. But if you have like a question, I will get back to you as long as it's not asking for free shit. Okay. Um, no first step having a wide range of vocabulary. Um, I think it depends on the person whether vocabulary is important or not. Let me drink some coffee here. It's like my third cup of coffee today. Yeah, that's the thing. And I know Americans have watered down coffee or whatever. Whatever. This is a hazelnut coffee. I love it. All right. So anyway, do you need to have that? Yes, you do. And what I find is that but I think there needs to be a synthesis of both vocabulary and grammar because what I will find when it comes to me when I'm learning, like right now, learning French, and right now, even learning Slovak, and I just got back to it. I've done a really shit job of keeping up with it, so I gotta, get back on it today. Um, I focus a lot on grammar, and I understand the grammar rules fine, and I feel very comfortable with them due to the fact that I am a very technical person. Okay. Before I got into English teaching, I did voting behavior and statistical analysis for campaigns and for candidates running for office. But I hated that job. I hated politics. I hate politics now. So I got into a job that I actually like, which is teaching English. I've been doing this for quite a few years now. Thank God I don't have to rely on politics anymore. But that's, that's a little diversion from what I was talking about, which is that I focus a lot on grammar because I'm very analytical. However, I hate memorizing words. And so I can say a lot of things grammatically correct, but I'm limited in what I can say. However, I find that a lot of people who focus just on vocabulary they know the vocabulary well, but they're constantly making grammatical mistakes. Now, which one do I think is going to get you further? I do think the vocabulary is going to get you further because I feel with me, even though I know the grammatical structures of certain things, I then still struggle to find the words. When you have the vocabulary, you know the words, you can kind of conjure up something and then say something that a person might understand what you're saying. So that's fine. That's actually okay. Um all right. So with that being said, I guess I side on vocabulary a little bit more, but I think that there is this problem with language learning that you focus on one thing or another thing and another thing. And when it comes to grammar, you don't necessarily need to focus on the rules of grammar. And I'm going to be doing a video. I've been promising a video on that. You don't need to necessarily do the rules of grammar. You don't need to know the name of a transitive or intransitive verb. You don't need to know, which one does, you need to know which one does which and be able to observe them and know them, but you don't necessarily need to know what they're called. And that's kind of one of the problems is that I will make a video about something and then you get somebody up there who's just trying to prove their worth or something. I don't fucking know. But anyways, they get up there and they're like, "Oh, well, in this situation it's this and this and this and just speak the language. Just speak the language." And I think vocabulary does that. Like with French, I have spent time learning French grammar, never picked up a grammar book. Like I actually have like right here, complete French grammar. I've had this I had this when I was living in Russia. So I've had this for 6 years, okay, because I bought it before. Never have opened that book once. And it's the only book that I have on French grammar, the only one. All of my knowledge of grammar in French is built on observations, not looking in a book and determining what the grammar structure is. So I think in this case, yeah, vocabulary is important because you can get your point across. But I do find that people who do focus so much on vocabulary, they always make the same grammatical mistakes. However, people who know grammar well can always build the vocabulary. It's just a matter of if you have patience or not. For me, when it comes to my languages and I'm learning, I'm a very impatient person, and and I got other shit I got to do. I mean, I wish I could just sit here and learn. Well, I take that back. Even for me, learning, and I'll just give you a little bit of an insight to me. Learning a language can sometimes be a little bit daunting now. So when I would say most of what I learned when with French, or what I have learned so far because I'm still doing it, was done before I got into teaching English. And I have probably learned less, but yet more. I now understand French more as an English teacher, but I have probably studied less because I just kind of see teaching or learning French as an extension of my work, which is teaching English. And it's just like I feel like I'm at work all day long. And I don't want to be like that. So yeah. Okay. Okay. It's not really important whether my accent is Canadian or American or Polish. What matters to me is the proper pronunciation. Exactly. That's it. Okay. And this is especially the case when we're talking about countries like the United States. Now, you will see a lot of people make videos who are from other countries saying that, oh, I get discriminated because of my accent in the United States. Chances are the person they interacted with was an asshole or they themselves are full of shit. Okay, now I'm talking about accent, right? But the only people that I have a problem with when it comes to having an American accent, and I call them out, are the ones who are claiming that they have an American accent, and then they're telling you I have an American accent. This is how you're going to learn how to speak like an American, speak like a native. Um, and that is the problem I have. These people who have a big following, it's their responsibility to give people correct information, and yet they don't. And that's where it is. However, when it comes to accent, again, it comes down to that question: who are you trying to impress? Okay, if you're trying to impress me, you're not going to get away with it. You're trying to impress a native speaker, you better be spot on, okay? Or you're not going to get away with it at all. Um, and there are people who can do that. So I mentioned Anna in the last video. She gets she definitely gets away with it. And she's from Ukraine originally. And what's nice is you see her first video, see where she is now, and you see that progression, which then brings me to the uh Venya Pak, I guess is his name. Um, he's also somebody just doesn't have, you can tell a little bit, extremely small, little bit here and there, but he has a very, very good American accent. The problem I have with him are two things, and I'll probably mention this in a video when I do a review of him, is that because I do have some video clips I want to show. There is a particular very neutral Asian American accent that there is throughout the United States. Oh, and by the way, this is a difference between Britain and America. So when we say Asian in the United States, we usually mean East Asia. Okay. So I know a lot of British people consider, because it is geographically, India as part, the Indian subcontinent is part of Asia, which again, it is. Um, in American English, we would specifically call people from India Indians, whereas Asian is going to be more East Asia. Whereas for British English, Asia is basically the continent, and anyone within that is Asian. So you will see if somebody is from India, a British person will usually say they're Asian, an American would usually say they're Indian. So you do get these variations in geographical identity between Americans and Brits. But anyway, um, he has a very, I would say, neutral, a very, very common neutral Asian American accent that is prevalent amongst Asian Americans. So if I have my headphones on, I hear somebody that is second, third, fourth generation American who speaks perfect English, probably doesn't even speak their native language, I can tell that they're Asian by that accent. He has that accent. So that means a lot of the input that he had is probably from those types of sources, which is great because it kind of puts him in, kind of like with Anna, where I said it connected her to a geographical region. This basically connects him to uh, an ethnicity within the United States. Okay, so that's good. So that's interesting. Only thing with Venya I haven't seen, which I'd like to see more of, or whatever. I haven't seen any videos of his progression, and that's where I have the issue. There's a point where there's an accent that sounds really good. Then there's a point where it sounds too good. And I hear now he apparently went to acting school. Okay. I'm sure he did. There's no reason to deny that. Whereas in acting school, they really work on um, accent reduction. And as a matter of fact, if you want to do accent reduction, don't go into an English teacher. Go to a voice actor who does that stuff professionally. Okay, those are the people that you want to go to when it comes to accent reduction. But the thing that I've noticed with Venya Pak is with Anna, I've seen her progression. I saw that first video. I'm like, yeah, you don't have an American accent. And then I see her now. There are some pronunciation things that I mentioned in my video previously, but she sounds like she's from Chicago or Northwest Indiana or Michigan or whatever. She has that sound. Now, with Venya, I haven't seen the progression, which makes me wonder what his exposure was to English prior to then coming here and when he actually technically came here. Okay. I do have some questions. I mean, I'm still gonna I'm still gonna side on the side of he's telling the truth, but there's just sometimes where something looks a little bit too good that you're wondering if somebody's doing it the opposite way. Because like I really could have done a channel saying, "Hi, my name is Dave, and I'm from here." Now, if you're from a pure bilingual family, you can have situations where you speak both without an accent. Now, I don't know what his Russian sounds like. You can probably tell me what his Russian sounds like. I mean, and I'm sure it sounds 100% like Russian. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't speak Russian. Я не знаю русский. Okay, I just don't know. Um. So yeah, and again, um, it just is a little suspicious, but I'm not going to take away from what he's done. If he has done that through coming here, learning it, going to acting school, improving, he's just as good as well. So his accent's really good. So it's not these people. Um, but it's the people like Veronica Marks who's saying, um, which is a play on Veronica Mars, which I think is interesting. But Veronica Marks saying, I have an American accent. No, you don't. Okay. Again, if you came up to me and said, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, I'm going to be like, no, you're not. You're from another country. And at that point, it comes back to who are you trying to impress? Okay. Let me get through some of these other things that other people have written down. New haircut looks, oh, yeah. You know what? I get a haircut. It's based on if I'm lazy or not. Prior to that, I'm like, I just didn't want to deal with the shit. And then I'm like, okay, this thing's getting a little bit out of hand. I need to get a haircut. So yeah. So here's another thing. Once your accent is detective, every native speaker perceives you as a foreigner and starts noticing mistakes that aren't even there. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, to be quite honest. Um, because I've been doing some research about perceived errors by native and non-native speakers. As a matter of fact, I have a bunch of might even have them on my iPad here. I was like looking at a bunch of things as far as that. I was reading about this yeah, so like something called P600 neuroscience and yeah, so it's like here when one person's mistake is another standard usage, the effect of foreign accents on um well, hold on a second. I gotta scroll up here. Yeah, so there are a bunch my iPad is just running really slow. Native reactions to non-native speech, a review of empirical research, stuff like that. So I've been looking at that specifically. And actually, if a native speaker, let's say a native speaker is listening to somebody, if a native speaker makes more of a mistake, then it's more noticeable and it hurts them more. Whereas somebody who is a non-native speaker makes a mistake, it is basically accepted. Okay, they might be more noticeable, but they're accepted. Whereas the research is showing that if you are a native speaker like myself, so let's say I'm a native speaker, I'm talking to another native speaker, but I keep on forgetting to use, let's say I keep on forgetting to use article. If I don't use article, then I will make mistake. Okay. So when I don't use an article as a native English speaker, and then I am making that mistake, it is way noticeable. But if you do speak with an accent, you make that mistake, you can get away with it. So this is one of the problems, and I don't think a lot of people know the problems of people like me who are a native speaker when it comes to doing a YouTube channel and putting myself out there and also teaching, is that it is incumbent upon us to make sure that we're correct all the time because anytime we make a little bit of the slightest mistake, somebody's going to jump on it. So I think that if you do have an accent, you actually can get away with more. If I make a mistake or what is perceived to be something that is uncommon, then it's a bigger issue. So for example, if I say, um, you know, there's a lot of people here. Okay. There's a lot of people here. Now, technically, it should be there are a lot of people. But if I say there's a lot of people here to another native English speaker, they wouldn't even notice that that was a mistake. Chances are a non native speaker who has systemically learned that it's they are will notice that mistake more than a native English speaker. So, in a native speaker's ears, it's not going to be a mistake. Okay. But so even though I just made that mistake, so it's not a perceived mistake by native speakers. Now, on the other hand, if I start making mistakes that are perceived as mistakes as a native speaker, it's much more noticeable. So I kind of disagree with that. I think having an accent allows you to get away with it more. The more and more you don't have one, the more and more the more and more you have an American accent or a British accent or whatever, the more and more you start being put into a box. That means that you should be perfect when it comes to grammar and other things. And yeah, so that's my belief. And again, the research is showing that. As a matter of fact, one of the ones on here, I don't know if I have it on my screen here or if it was here. It was basically yeah, it was one of these experiments. Again, my iPad is just really slow lately. And again, like I said, this is a podcast, so I don't care if I'm sitting here just fumbling around with stuff because it's not a regular video. Um, like university students' perceptions of native and non-native teachers of English. Okay. I got to go through all these, but this is one I'm going to be making it on and on that. So the the data doesn't suggest stuff. Um, 3 cups of coffee a day delays Alzheimer's by 5 years. Okay, so if I drink 6 a day, does it reduce it by 10? Okay. So yeah. Um, all right. So let's look. As you said, pronunciation is the most important thing, but I make no bone about speaking with an accent. It is exactly what I want simply because I'm really fond of the American accent. Now, that okay, now the most important thing to know here is is having an accent important? Like having an American, let's go back. Is having an American accent important? No. Now, if that's what you want, and that's what you want, again, I think you can want to have something and then do it and then be proud of it. But the problem I have with a lot of these videos is they encapsulate it into the whole English learning process that it makes a learner then think if you want to be understood in English, you have to have this accent. Now, if you want to accomplish it on your own for your own pride, I mean your own ego, maybe, but your own pride, go for it. Go for it. If that's like what your goal is, go for it. You should do it. That's what you should do. But don't think that it is there, that having an accent is a hindrance to then speak English. I think of my students that I have had, I would say one has not had a noticeable accent. One. And she is from Ukraine. She's on the other side of the pond now. Not going to give too much away, but if she's watching, she knows who she is. I've had one, and even when she went back to Ukraine, the little bit of time she was in Ukraine, the Ukrainian accent started creeping back in. So she came back, and we worked on just getting her back in the environment. It was just getting her back in the environment that she kind of got rid of that. Um, but I do know some problems. Now, I made a review video about about Anna, the one I just did. I did the interview. I did a review interview in a video with Anna. Now, a lot of you might be saying, "Oh, well, Dave, did you pick those videos because of their accent?" If you go back, I mean, with Anna, yes, she does have that British sounding accent. Now, I can't differentiate where that's from. Um, I can't tell a Liverpool accent from a Birmingham accent to a London accent. Beats hell out of me which one's which. Okay. That's why I know American accents. I can't really say anything about a British accent because I just know British accent. I don't know the regions of it. But anyways, the point is that when it comes to I don't even think we talked about her accents. In that whole hour and a half interview that we did, we might have mentioned her accent, how she was able to improve and included the accent as part of that, but it was much, much more about the process of learning and a way to actually um approach learning English. It was more about the learning process. Accent didn't even really come into it. Why? Because it wasn't number one, two, three, four, five, or six on my priority list, right? Even though she has it. Okay. Now you might be saying, Dave, would you have interviewed her if she had a a Russian accent or something like that? If the information was good, yes. I do find, I do find some um like her information is really more linguistics information. And it was more talking to her, wasn't talking about English, even though that's what she does and that's what I teach, as much as it is about the learning process that people go through to learn a language. So that's what I was really focusing on. But yeah, if you want to learn an American accent, then go for it. Go for it. It's, but don't think that it is a hindrance to you being understood in English because it's not. It's not at all. Because like I said, I've had one student that had a really good accent that I couldn't even tell. I mean, like the first lesson, I was sitting there going, is this some sort of prank? Is this person really a non-native speaker? I mean, it was that good. Everyone else has. I've understood 95% of my students when they do their first lesson. So just take that as take that for whatever. Um, hey, everyone from Moscow, how are you doing? Thank you so much for your videos. Thank you for teaching us English for free. Cool. Hey, I love Moscow. I'm not going to get political, but I think that I've pretty much said where I am on politics in Russia. I and that's the thing between St. Petersburg and Moscow. I lived in Murmansk, so those other two are fine. A lot of my students are from Russia. I mean, an overwhelming majority are, and I just hope one day that it'll come to the point where people in Russia can just get their card out and pay for a lesson because I know a lot of people have asked me about that. And unfortunately, I don't have any solutions. So yeah, hopefully someday things will change that I'll be able to give lessons to people throughout the world. It's not just Russia, but throughout the world, wherever they are. When I lived in Canada, I was often asked, "What's the accent?" And I used to ask back, "Is it that obvious?" But then I realized that these were friendly questions, not criticism, but genuine interest. Yes, yes, and that's the thing. And I don't know if I mentioned it in the video about the American accent, but I do find that people who come from unicultural, so just unicultural, single cultural environments, that they're more focused on having a correct accent than anyone else. Okay, let me give you a story actually. So when I was in Russia, when I was in Murmansk, when I lived in Murmansk, it wasn't that I was the only American that I could see anywhere in Murmansk. I was like the only person who wasn't Russian who was living there. And you had Murmansk, and then you had so to get on the bus, if I got on the bus at Murmansk, I would go to my town, it's still called that, Murmashi. And like with the Russian accent, it's a little different. But we started in Murmansk. The next stop, essentially big stop, would be the Murmansk Mall. Then you would go to the city of Kola. Then you would go to my town, which is Murmashi, and then you would go to the airport. And I would go on the bus. I would give them money. and I would say like Mermashi or like Murmashi or I even forget how I said it back then. And the bus driver would look at me like, "What did you?" and say like, "What?" like in Russian, and I'm like, "Okay, we're in Murmansk now. Murmansk Mall, Cola, and airport do not sound like Murmashi. You can pretty much deduce by the other words I said where I'm going." And I just found that when I was in Murmansk, that it being very, very heavily unicultural and only Russian, that if you said something that even people can figure out what you're trying to say, there'd be a little bit of a dick to you when you said it not in the correct accent. I go to St. Petersburg and Moscow, don't experience that at all. Because Moscow and St. Petersburg, they I think they were just more open to multicultural accents and stuff like that. Okay, so I do find that people that come from this environment of unilingualism or uniculturalism are more focused on that. And maybe that's because when people like me come to a place like Murmansk, we're more criticized in a place, whereas and you do have here this here in the United States. If you go, so my family is originally from Chicago, my mom's side. My dad's side of the family is from Tishomingo, Mississippi. Just go look where Tishomingo is. If you know how to spell Tishomingo, put it in the comments or put it in the chat. I'll be damn impressed. But if you can find where Tishomingo is, um, congratulations. But that's where they're from. And yeah, so I mean, like my experience in the English language is vast, just because I've essentially lived everywhere and been to every state but five. And my family's from all over. If you go to Tishomingo, Mississippi, people, if you're unilingual or if you speak with an American accent, there they might do it. But if you go to a city like Chicago, you're not going to experience that. So I guess it depends on where you come from, whether it is very, very um, lacking of culture or lacking of people from other backgrounds or not. Okay. Um, so I think when you can combine both good vocabulary and an accent, whether it's going to be an American British one, doesn't matter. That's lit. See, now this is an interesting. Okay, let me finish reading this. Just find what you're best at and keep hustling that way. Now, I will say, like lit, for example, where I come from, lit means you're very drunk. Whereas, like in one of these videos that Lingua Marina did, said lit means like very cool, and it does. But I've never used it in that context. I didn't even know that's what it was meant until um like I watched her video. Honestly, like where I come from, when we say, "Oh yeah, that's lit," we don't say that's lit. We say he's lit or she's lit, which means like um means the person's absolutely drunk. So being lit means like when you're kind of in that phase between being sober and being absolutely shit faced, that kind of okay, let's put it this way. It's that kind of level where you feel very comfortable speaking a foreign language, right? That's what we say is lit. So that's I think's interesting. Um again, I don't think, I mean, do like you said, do what fits best for you. Like he said, yeah, do what you think's gonna help you out. Um, Time to get an iPad with an M2 chip. I get this is the only Apple product I have. And this is probably I'll get another iPad because I use them for my lessons, but I don't like Apple products. I'm not going to be one of the ones that buy into the oh, I need an Apple and then go to the Apple store and wait 10 hours to have somebody see why my thing is so slow. I am not an Apple person. I'm just going to say that. I got a Samsung S20. I need to get that upgraded, but it still works. Do you think Venupack has an accent? So I already mentioned that earlier, and or wait, have we gone through a few? Okay, no, we're there. No, I don't think he does. I mean, okay, does he have an American accent? Yes. Does he have a foreign accent? No. And again, I kind of would like to know a little bit more about that. I haven't seen videos of his progression over time, which I would like to see more. With Anna, with the English fluency journey, I saw her first video and I look at a video now and I can say, I see how she's progressed. Um, Indian accent and French accents are quite hard to understand because of the stress placement and different annotations. French, I would say not as much, really. And this doesn't have to do with me learning French. I think um in okay, this is something really to understand with English. Where stresses are in a word, real I mean, unless it's something like record and record, where the placement of the stress can also change the pronunciation a little, which then changes whether something's a verb or a noun. Okay, those situations are important. But when it comes to where stress is in a word, it really doesn't matter. Unless, like I said, we're talking about a word that that stress then determines some other aspect of it. Okay, so like live, and this is, and even pronunciation, like live and live, they're both spelled the same. They both have different meanings. Now, speaking of French, um, French Canadians. Now, I got my master's degree at McGill University in Montreal, so I interacted a lot with French Canadians, and the French Canadians were kind of, I guess you can even say, notorious for just having the stress in the sentence and in the words absolutely in the wrong place. So it sounds like this a lot of times with French Canadians. And it doesn't take away from my ability to understand them. So intonation and stress placement, not as important unless it's a word that is important. Okay. Now, if you want to sound like a native speaker, yes. Um, but it's not as important. Let's put it this way: the stress isn't gonna make it, with those exceptions that I don't know what you're saying. And even in those situations, if you say, I need to record something instead of saying I need to record something, I can deduce what you're saying by the word that you're using. I just know that you mispronounced it wrong. So I think that stress and intonations are over stressed in English. The Indian accent as an American is can be hard to understand. Okay, but there are parts of the United States. I mean, this is the reason why I made that one video of that guy talking about scooping up the brains and all that kind of stuff, to show that even in the United States, you can have people who just have a real hard accent to understand. So that's worldwide. So as a matter of fact, okay, as a matter of fact, Venya Peck doesn't have what? So I just need to um he does have an accent in Russian, but it has become more obvious over. Yeah, so give me your opinion, what you think of his Russian accent, because I can't give a judgment on that. Like I said, I can't even tell you about British accents. Because again, if somebody says, "Oh, he's not from Liverpool, he's from Birmingham," it'd sound the same to me. Can native speakers think that a person is uneducated or stupid due to the presence of an accent? No, as a matter of fact, I think it's the opposite. Because a lot of America okay, now when you say native speakers, I can only speak from the perspective of an American, okay? As an American, I say that no, because many Americans are just unilingual. We only know English. Okay. And a lot of people say, oh, well, Americans are dumb because they only know English. Okay. The same amount of British people only know English. Same amount of Australians know only English. Same amount of people from New Zealand only know English. Same thing with Ireland, though they might have some Irish, know a little bit more Irish there. We always get the shit end of the stick when it comes to, oh, Americans don't speak another language, but go to the UK. They don't do it either. Why don't they get the shit end of the stick? It's kind of like, you know, it just pisses me off. Anyway, um, I don't think so. And see, and again, I think this is determined by the country you're coming from. If you come from a country where having an accent is deemed uneducated, then I think that is a cultural norm there. It's not here. Okay. Um, if you are speaking incorrectly, then it can be. This goes back to that video that I talked about where I show the guy from Vernon, Florida, which I've been to Vernon, Florida before because I lived a lot of my life in Florida. It goes to that point where um even Like that guy is deemed stupid, and people will sit there in the comments like, "No, he's not stupid. He's just no, the guy's dumb." Okay, I'm sorry, the guy's stupid, and, and but he's a native speaker, right? That's the point. He's a native speaker. All right, so yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more about Venue Pack or Puck or Pack. I'm not sure. Okay, I think having a perfect American accent is more to brag about among your friends than among native speakers. Exactly. This is why whenever you see people like Lingua Marina, I mean, this is, and I need to look more in her channel. This is the irony of it all, I guess, is she talks so much about American culture, though I rarely see her with other Americans. How okay, it's like I say, yeah, I lived in Russia, but I hung out with a bunch of English teachers. I can't and I still wouldn't even say I know what Russian culture is. Okay, because the way in which I think and the way in which I do things is very much it is very different than what happens in Russia. I mean, when I was in Russia and people ask my opinion of certain politicians, I'd say, yeah, I think that guy is full of shit. I don't like him. I can't wait till he's out of office. I hope he breaks his leg so he's can't go and vote on this bill or whatever. And they were like shocked. They were like, just because the way in which we interact and the way that we do things is culturally different than the way that other people do things. That's just what it is. Okay. So in that situation, um, I do think, you know, again, it's more to brag than it is to yeah, and I just think it's so funny because Lingua Marina does seem to hang mostly around other Russians, which might give her a confidence boost as to her accent. Um, yeah. But then that's another problem too, is when you get, and I'm going to talk about this with a lot of other products out there, is that when somebody like Lingua Marina like approaches somebody, they know that she's a YouTube star. They know she has what 9 million followers or 8 million or whatever it is. They're going to want to be nice to her. They know they can get something out of it. So she says, "Hi, my name's Lingua Marina. I got 8 million followers. Do you think I have an American accent?" Somebody's going to say yes. Okay, that's the whole reason I created this channel. Well, actually, no. I created this channel to do English lessons, but then I realized it's better to call out the bullshit in the English language world than it is to talk about lessons because there are a lot of lessons. There are a lot of good lessons. You can find them. And I think we're even moving away from the way that I think we're moving away from learning English to changing the way in which we learn a language. And in English's video, the interview I did with her, that's kind of what we talk about. All right, so let's see. He does have an accent. Oh, okay. I already did that one. Wow, that's why rap is so good in English. Flexible stresses are yeah, and a lot of rap just sounds wrong to my ears. But then that's music in general as well. Okay. What's your favorite musicians? Okay. So like okay, actually I'm not gonna call you out, but I want to say this is an example of what like it is grammatically incorrect to be what are your favorite musicians? But if you said this to me, hey, what's your favorite musicians? I wouldn't really think of that. That is like, I'm like, oh, okay, well, it is this. And this is the problem I have with a lot of English is it's so much on you have to say it right. You have to say it right. This is the problem I have when it comes to English with everyone, which kind of is a preview to my future video, which is that you have people who say, "Oh, make all these mistakes. Fuck it." Okay. Then you have people like English with Everyone says, if you don't say things exactly this 100% specific way, you're wrong. And we're going to listen to a video and find every little nitpicking thing and say wrong, wrong, wrong. And this is bad. Okay, musicians, I mean, they're all over the place. I mean, if I pull up my Spotify, I mean, I have so many. Um, yeah, I just got so like I got a playlist for the 60s, for the 70s, for the 80s. I got a French music like I have a Quebecois list. I have other, um, hell, I'll just, you know what, I don't have much to do today. Fuck it. I'll just go to albums, playlist, albums. Let's see. Alanis Morissette. Um, let's see. Alanis Morissette, The Beach Boys, The Beatles, 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 Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, Billy Squire, Black Eyed Peas, The Cardigans. Cardigans, very underrated um, group. Que de Pirate, which is a French singer, French Canadian singer. Damon Robitaille, another French Canadian. Donovan, The Doors, The Eagles. Let's see, Eric Burden and the Animals, one of the best, maybe the best 70s group or 60s group of all time. The Eurythmics, Falco, Fatboy Slim, Fiona Apple, Foo Fighters, Garbage, 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 Genesis, George Harrison, The Guess Who, Hole, Jane, French singer as well, Jethro Tull, Jennifer, Led Zeppelin. The list goes on. Okay, so the list goes on. If I'm here, I'm going to be spending a lot of time. But I figured I said I was going to give myself about an hour and a half on this podcast. I said originally it's going to be 30 minutes, but like screw it. Um, it's my world. I can decide if I want it to be long or not. Okay, if you hear an accent that sounds off for you, so you understand right away that it is a foreigner, you might think that he is from another part of the country. No, probably not. I mean, I guess it depends on what it is. Okay, I guess it depends on. I think you still have to have everything kind of like with Anna from English Fluency Journey. She does have some things every now and then it gives it away. Very, very slight that you're like, that sounds off, but it sounds like it could be a pronunciation issue. Like, for example, the word donkey, the animal, the donkey. I say donkey, my mom says donkey. I say robot, my mom says robot. We're from the same family. I learned most of my English from around here and her. So even within the direct family, you will have different pronunciations. So I don't think that it would be because of another part of the country. Um, okay. I used to visit South SC. Um, so an SC, is that South Carolina? And then I would show them citations and clips from the radio that go, well, we do speak like that in our state. So I assume SC means South Carolina. I'm not sure. South Carolina can have a very unique accent. Now that's another thing too. If you have family from all over and interact with people from all over, like I have. Now I lived in Florida most of my life, even though I'm from Chicago and I'm back in the Illinois area now. In Florida, Florida is a state that just has people from everywhere. So you start learning the differences in accents that even other people can't. Whereas, like for me, I can tell the difference between a Tennessee accent and a Texas accent. For the average person, it might not be like that, but you kind of pick up those skills in Florida. Um, okay, when it comes to rap or any other music genre, I think it good in terms of verbs. It is pretty easy to rhyme verbs in. Okay, so this is one thing that I mentioned in my video that I recently did about um, ways for Russian speakers to think about English. Is that English is a very verb heavy language. It will really focus on verbs. Okay, and when we do focus on those verbs, then yeah, that's very um, very good. Um, because a lot of Russian speakers will just go to the noun. Like I don't know if I said in this video, but like when I was in Murmansk, I didn't know how many ways you could say Murmansk. Murmansk, Murmanskaya, Murmansky, Murmanska, Murmansk. It was just like in English, it's Murmansk, right? We don't do anything um to the nouns really, except add an S. Or we might have to change like person to people or whatever. So being very verb heavy is very important when understanding and just interacting with English. Um, okay, so your channel should be named a rude American guy that tells people they are bad at English straight to their face. Um, okay, I'm good for that. Hey, if the only problem I have is if you are claiming that you speak something well and you don't. And if you don't like that, I mean, bye. I mean, again, I don't know if this is sarcastic or whatever, but the thing about my channel, and this is, and I guess this is a misconception about Americans, is that people sit there and say with Americans like, "Oh, they're nice. They want to, treat you." No, we'll tell you how it is. Okay, and if you don't like the way in which, if I say something that you don't agree with, then I'm not going to sugarcoat things. My whole thing here is to say things that are important. Okay. He put, okay. But no, see, that's the problem with the internet. You can't tell when something's sarcastic or not. But I do want to make that clarity because this is the problem I have with things like lingua marina, right? Is that it's just like it's oh, you're doing good, even though you're fucking up left and right. There's a okay, that's gonna be for another video. We'll talk about that. Okay, can you tell the difference between South American and Canadian accents? So South American, you mean like Brazil? And because I mean Guyana is the only place I know is English speaking, and then Belize, technically, though that's in Central America. Those are the only English speaking. Give me just a little bit more clarity on that, and I can answer that. Just comment down below. Okay, I never really cared about my accent. I embrace it because it means that I speak more than one language. And Fernando, you're right because I've heard it. So, and actually, like I would say, I know Fernando's accent because I've had lessons with him. I would say that he's somebody that he speaks really, really well. And his accent, and as a matter of fact, I would even say, I'll say, I'll put you on the spot, Fernando. I'd say your accent is very, very light. Okay. I think overall you're a good speaker. And that's the thing. It's most important to do that. But like you said, it actually um embraces who you are. It embraces not just that you speak more than one language, but it embraces who you are and what makes you who you are. And that's something that started as the United States and Canada, by the way, becomes more and more multicultural. You were starting to see second and third generation Americans retaining the accent that they have. Now, Ollie Richards did a really good video about, 5 or 6 accents that are in America that you don't know about. I knew them all. But anyway, he did talk about Cuban, like the Cuban Americans in Miami, and how generation through generation they've kept that. And you notice this a lot with, let's say, people from Puerto Rico. Now, I lived in Orlando, a lot of people from Puerto Rico. A lot of Puerto Ricans are also from New York. And what you start getting is a specific Puerto Rican accent in Orlando that's kind of a mixture of Puerto Rican and someone that sounds like they're from Puerto Rico and New Yorker. Okay. And it creates this uniqueness. So we are seeing a dispersion of the American accents. And like I said, I'm from Chicago. The north side of Chicago and the south side of Chicago has a different accent. I could tell if someone's from the south side. I can tell if somebody's from the north side or even the suburbs in many cases. So this goes back to one of my first videos I did about an English, in an American accent. The question is, what is an American accent? Um, yeah. Um, okay. So yeah, Fernando, great to see you. It's great to see you. Hope that everything's going well with your studies and all. Can you please comment on Black English accent? I've heard several Americans mention it being a thing. Okay, so there is that. But again, I can't comment on that. I mean, um, I think that would be more within the purview of people who kind of study that. Now, there is one thing that's very interesting is the Black migration, um, in the United States. So after the Civil War, and then from there to, I would say, probably the 30s or the 40s up to the pre-war era, maybe even post-war, a lot of the migration from the South, where people were slaves and they were put in that situation, when they migrated to the North, they essentially went straight up. So you'll see a lot of people who are black in the Chicago area, um, come up from New Orleans. Okay, you'll see a lot of people who are from Detroit come up from Alabama in that area. You see a lot of people who are black who go to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York. A lot of them will be from Atlanta, from Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and would have migrated up. That was basically a straight up migration. And so, one thing that you see a lot more in these migration patterns, there might be some language aspect to it. I don't know about that as well, but there are cultural things. So you will see, for example, you'll see, for example, like the one I'm familiar with, the New Orleans to Chicago migration. Jazz is very big in New Orleans, also very big in Chicago, not big in the other cities. Soul food that comes from New Orleans is very common. The foods are very similar in Chicago, so you do see this migration um, going up. Um, so yeah. Um, it's so-called Ebonics, a term for African American English. You better don't go there. Okay. Yeah. So I think that is, and maybe this is about how English is changing, right? Because let's and this okay, this is the problem. Like these books here, this is the problem I have with these books. Even though I tell people to look at them and all that, it creates a set definition of what a language is. And I'm going to be making a video about this. I know I've said that phrase a lot of times during this video, but I am going to be making a video about. I made a definitive thing saying that something was a modal verb. However, a modal verb is very subjective, and I'll get into that in a different video. Um. Okay. Venipak speaks Russian at a native level. He was definitely born and raised in Russia, but at the moment he has a slight American accent, maybe because he spends more time around native speakers. Okay. So than Marina. So yeah, than Marina. Could be, could be. Okay. I mean, and again, I don't know how long he has lived here, but if you really want to do accent reduction, he did it the right way, which is to go through an a voice actor or an acting school that works on that. It's not. So when we teach English, there are three things we focus on. We focus on accents, we focus on vocabulary, and we focus on grammar. Okay, I just fucked up, didn't I? We focus on pronunciation, we focus on grammar, we focus on vocabulary. We don't focus on accent. Okay, so forget the first part of that. I fucked up a little bit there. All right, I'm gonna do screw it. I'm gonna do an hour and a half. We got 10 more minutes to go here. Yeah, I figured it was a joke, but I just want to throw it out there. Hello, coach. I am not a coach. I'm not Bill Belichick. Do Americans say he is a doctor? I'm two, or I am two. Okay. Is contraction possible in the structure? Thank you. So I'm, yeah, I'm two. See, that's an interesting one. He's a doctor. I would say so am I. So am I. Okay. I've heard people say, yeah, I'm too. I have heard people say that, but I think here I am too would be like, but I think most people would say, so am I think. Um, can you please comment on these mistakes native speakers make that aren't even mistakes? Like it don't matter. It ain't nothing. Now, ain't is just like wrong. So it don't matter. That's kind of like when I said earlier, there's a lot of people here. Okay. Um, it is this becomes kind of the problem in teaching English, and and it's a problem with these videos that I make because everyone like if I say yeah that don't matter because I say that in my videos, I probably say it a lot, and somebody who's learning English would be like wrong, and guess what, grammatically it is wrong, but it's accepted. The thing is to know when something is an accepted mistake and something isn't. So, like Lingua Marina constantly dropping articles is a mistake that I'm going to know. Okay. And there is a difference between an article being swallowed up and an article just missing. You can tell the difference. Venya is Russian, but I thought he was raised in America because Marina sometimes mentioned he's a native. Um, I want to find out more about this. Okay, I really do. So yeah. Hey Andrew, what's up? So hope you're doing well. Andrew is another person who I've talked to many hours. Hope to see you soon. Um, hope your car. Hope you like your new car. You just bought a new car. So yeah, thank you for stopping by. I hope everything is doing well. Hope that you're safe out there, and I hope you haven't put too many miles on that car yet, but I'm sure you're gonna, because I do the same thing, right? So yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Hope to see you in the near future. But yeah, hope all is good with you and everything. So yeah. Uh I'm in Canada in Minnesota. Now that is okay. So I need to do a little bit more research, because if you ever see the movie Fargo, oh geez, oh duh. Okay, they sound like they're from Canada. So they can do the oot and the boot and stuff like that. And I know now, if you now again, I used to live in Canada and I want to immigrate to Canada. If you want to make a Canadians are known as the nicest people on earth. But if you want to turn them into a rabid beast, say that they say the word a boot and they just go nuts. They just go absolutely nuts. Um it's kind of funny. But anyway, it is hard. But I would say now what I have heard and what the research that I have seen says is that these accents in not North Carolina, North Dakota and Minnesota are particularly connected to Norwegian immigration or Scandinavian immigration to that region. Now, I don't know how true that is, because if you go to Utah, you see a lot of Norwegian and Scandinavian immigration there, but you don't hear that at all. So I don't know how much that's connected. But I would say, interestingly enough, um, the oo sound like oot or something like that is stronger in the United States, the Minnesota, North Dakota region, than it is in Canada. Now, that's one thing about Canada that I can't tell the difference. If somebody, and I don't know, I have to do more research because now I'm really interested in it. Is Canada, like if somebody's from Vancouver and somebody's from Toronto, I can't tell the difference. Now, okay, if you look at the Maritimes and all that, and the Newfoundland accent and all that, you can tell the difference. And obviously, if somebody's from Quebec, but if someone's an Anglophone in Quebec, and I talk to somebody from, let's say, Victoria, and I speak to an Anglophone who lives on the West Island of Montreal, I can't differentiate the two. I can't tell the difference between one or the other. I'm going to try to see if there's variation, if there are variations. See if there is variations. That's wrong. See if there are variations when it comes to the Canadian accent. And see, that's one thing we'll say, that there is, and then put a plural if we're doing it as a contraction. Now, if I say, I'm going to see if there is variations, that would sound wrong. But if you do it as a contraction, you kind of get away with it. So this is another thing about sounding like a native speaker: contractions, 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 contractions. Learn those. They're going to help you. Dave, you're an amazing teacher with a beautiful personality. Well, thank you. I mean, I I don't know if I have a beautiful personality. I try not to be boring like Marina. Okay. Hi, I'm here and I'm here and I'm gonna be showing. Oh, isn't this thing? No. But see, that's Americans. I think a lot of us are just animated people, which was funny when I taught Mermans. My teacher or the boss there said to me, "Oh, Dave, we love you. You're so emotional." Now, emotional in English, at least American English, I'm assuming you know, all dialects of English, means that like you cry a lot. You're like, oh my God, I can't go through with this. Emotional means like you're in emotional distress, right? And then I had to correct her on that. I'm gonna say animated, yes. Emotional, no. I'm not. I'm not drowning myself in beer to get through the day. Why do we say 10-15 minutes is enough and why are not enough? So we say, okay, because this is actually interesting. Okay, 10-15 minutes have okay, 10 to 15 minutes have gone so fast. Okay. Can we say has gone so fast? Okay, now this goes into something a little bit different. Maybe I'll get into it. I do have a membership program that I just started. And part of that membership program, I'm going to be putting more videos on there. They're going to focus on actual rules about things and like what you can get away with or whatever. So if you want to be a member, those will start coming in December. It'll still be a while, but I have a membership for that. Um, so anyways, with that being said, um 10 to 15 minutes is we want to think of that as kind of like our singular subjects here. So if we in that situation, we would say 10 to 15 minutes as our subject, 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to see how you have it written here. Because this one's interesting. 10 to 15 minutes is enough. So you can kind of replace it like saying this amount of time is enough. So that's what we're saying there. Okay. Now, the same thing if we say 10 minutes is enough. It's like this amount of time is enough. So with amount of time, we kind of encapsulate, we change the meaning of amount of time to this. And this amount of time is considered, in this case, kind of a singular, it doesn't have a gender, it's just it, right? So that's the reason why. Um, okay. But yeah, that goes more to like what is like phrases within subjects that becomes a little bit harder to talk about. But I'll talk about that one in one of my members videos when I get that up because I think that's a very important thing. And usually at my lessons, I talk about this quite often. Um, if you said what's your favorite musician, it's wrong. It's wrong sentence. How then should I have said that? Thanks for yeah. I mean, I would just say what are so like in this case, what are your favorite musicians? Usually, so this is where it becomes a little bit hard to know when to say what is or what's and get away with it, and when you can't get away with it, and that is a feeling for the language. Okay. So yeah. Oh, Brandon, you didn't have to retract that message. I have to come back to that one actually. But I think it's very interesting. Um, what's your favorite drink? I I don't drink like if we're talking about alcohol. I mean, now we're getting off the topic of that. I got okay. What I got here? Got a bottle of water. I got my coffee. And Andrew knows this. I have my diet cherry cola here from Kroger. I don't drink alcohol, not because of any type of moral thing or whatever. I just think alcohol tastes like shit. Okay. Beer tastes like puke. Vodka tastes like kerosene. I just don't like alcohol. Now you put a little sweetness in there. Call me a foo-foo. I don't care. You give me something like a blue Hawaiian, like I had in Hawaii. I'll even show you the picture here. Blue Hawaiian. Oh, we're at our time. Blue Hawaiian. That's it. Now, if you ever want to follow me on Instagram, there is one for Dave's English, but like I never go on that. I even have the same one. But if you want to go to Dave Trotter underscore 101, you can go there. I mean, I just like I said, I just post pictures of very God, my internet's so bad today. Just kind of post random pictures of shit. Like here, you want to give me something like that when I was in Hawaii? I'll drink that. That works for me. All right. Okay, I don't think anyone fell in love with me. If they do, they need to get their eyes checked. Holy hell. I was told it was important to use American British vocabulary depending on where you are. However, one American told me it doesn't matter. Correct. And Americans understand British vocabulary. Yeah, I mean, there is no there. Okay, when it comes to British English and American English, yeah, we can understand them and it's fine. The only difference is maybe if there's a British idiom that they use. Now, if you go online, if you go onto YouTube, look for I think it's so there's a channel called Rooster Teeth. And I don't know if it's on the Rooster Teeth channel, but it was like it's something called Gavin. So there's a guy called Gavin Free, and he would come up with these words. Like he would have like two or three phrases in British English that were real. Then he would make up one, and then the thing was it's like called British or Gavin, and you had to figure out which one. And there were two Americans there trying to guess, and you had to try to figure out which one Gavin made up. So if you can find that, that's actually good. Good thing to watch. Actually, overall we can understand them, but they might throw an idiom or something out there, or even a phrasal verb that just doesn't apply here. Like to be taken in, they say like to be fooled in British English. Here, to be taken in can mean that, but it probably would mean to bring someone into your house that maybe they lost their house or they're in need and we bring them into our house. Um, so, hi, what do you think about non-reality mistakes made in NS, such as "it don't matter" and "this ain't a thing"? So, I kind of mentioned that a few times, so I'm going to kind of go that. I've mentioned like how that is. Um, I mean, I think they're fine. That's the language, okay. And I think getting to this point of knowing the language 100%. Oh, that this is in this form or whatever. You spend so much time on the rules instead of just talking. Okay. Dave, you once said that you're thinking of moving to Canada. Why is that? Asking because for me, Canada is the country where I felt the most at home. That's it. Now, I was going to do my PhD in London. Actually, I had started my PhD at Western Ontario University, and I dropped out after 2 weeks because I wanted to focus on English full time. I was dumb enough to think that I could do my PhD in political science and do teaching online full time, but that wasn't the case. So I had to make a choice. I made a choice to teach English. Montreal is my favorite city in the world. Just pure and simple. Montreal is my favorite city in the world. There are a lot of problems here in the United States. You know, if I showed you my if I showed you how much I owe in student loans, which most of that is from my school here in the United States, not McGill University, you'd be shitting bricks. You'd if you learned about the American healthcare system, it's horrible. When I lived in Canada, when I lived in Montreal, the healthcare system is beautiful. It's perfect. I loved it. Um, when a lot of my students talk about immigrating to the United States, and this is where I guess I'll get a little bit political, I ask them, "Do you know what to expect?" Because there's this belief of what you see in the movies. Do you know what to expect? Do you understand what a healthcare deductible is? Do you understand what a copay is? Do you understand how much your child's education is going to cost? Do you understand how much healthcare, or excuse me, childcare is going to cost? Do you understand how much it's going to cost to do a lot of the things that you love? And then they get here and they go, "Holy hell, there's a lot more." Yeah. Okay. I do find that most European countries, as well as Canada, treat their citizens a lot better than here in the United States. Here in the United States, we don't do nearly enough. And yeah, as far as Canada, I love Canada. Now, it wasn't a matter of me living in Canada. I actually was in love with Canada as a child. I can show you a picture of me when I was like 12, 13 years old wearing a Toronto Blue Jays jacket. Okay. That was many, many suns and moons ago. But I love Canada. I just love it. Okay. Is there any movie that you can recommend to watch? I'm not a big movie watcher. Um, as far as what to watch, if you are I'm assuming if you're watching me right now, you're at a B2 and higher level. If you're an A1 level, you don't know. I'm just speaking gibberish to you. I recommend watching podcast where there's an interview where people are interacting. Because what you want to do is you want to hear these quick interactions. You also want to hear people talking over each other. because then it creates a little bit of confusion that you're trying to understand what all of them are saying at once. Go for things like this. So, like debate programs or something like that. That's what you should do. Movies, I honestly think movies have gone to shit lately. The last movie I saw was in 2019, or the last movie I saw in a theater was in 2019 when I visited Romania, and it was Ford versus Ferrari. Um, yeah, I just think movies have gone to shit nowadays. Most of the movies I watch are from the 80s and the 90s. I had thought about doing a video about movies. The movie The Right Stuff is probably my favorite movie. It was made 1983 or 1984, about the astronaut, the Mercury astronaut program. And just so you know, a lot of American movies, if you want to watch them, and if you're from Russia, you're the baddies in a lot of those movies. But I'm sure it's reciprocal. I'm sure we're the baddies in a lot of Russian movies as well. Some Americans watch British shows with subs because they can either yeah, because they're either unaware or vaguely aware of some of the words. And yeah, and I do think this is the case. So there is a movie called Four Lions. And now for me, I know a lot more about British English because I have watched British English shows for years and I interact with people a lot from Britain. Again, when I lived in Florida, it's a tourist area and we had a lot of tourists from yeah, we had a lot of tourists from Britain, from England particularly. And I just got used to speaking to them. So for me, it was like really easy because the other thing about listening. So if you ever see that movie Four Lions, this is a really good example because if you don't know a lot of the cultural things in Britain, you might not get what a lot of the jokes are there. I just finished watching a television series called what was it? What was it called? It's called like the Blue House or something. It's a Quebec. It's in French. It's a Quebec television series. Um. So yeah. So it was. Yeah. It was. I think it was the La Maison Bleue, and it was all in French. It was in French Canadian. But like all the references they make in that, if you don't know Quebec politics, they go over your head. Same thing as I mentioned with Family Guy. Family Guy has a lot of cultural connections in that cartoon. And if you don't know those cultural connections, it's going to be harder. You might find it funny, but it becomes so much funnier if you can understand why are they using this particular example. You can ask yourself, why are they using this particular example there? Um, all right. I've heard Americans say Coke. It is common to say Coke or Cola. Um, People from Chicago say pop. I've never said pop in my life. I guess that's a lie. I just said it right now. I usually say Coke. And that's more of a southern thing, actually. Again, maybe that's the side of my family from there. Um, so cola, I would usually say soda. I say I'm gonna go and get some soda over at the store. Or some Coke. Okay. Soda, Coke kind of indicates like some product that would come from Coke. So it is not uncommon to hear people call Pepsi Coke in the United States. They'll say, I want a Coke. And you'll go into some restaurants, and this is the funny thing. If you go in and try this, if you come to the United States, KFC, or you might be able to try this in your own country if you have a KFC. I don't know. KFC and Taco Bell are owned by Pepsi, by PepsiCo. If you go into a Taco Bell or a KFC here in the United States, you say, I want a Coke. They will then ask you, they'll say to you, we don't have Coke. Do you want a Pepsi? So try that. If you have a KFC where you are, go there and ask them for a Coke and see if they say we don't have Coke, but we have Pepsi. See if they do that because it'd be really interesting. Have you noticed that in some American movies, the director, my assumption, chooses more lazy style English, whereas in others, the enunciation would be more clear. Also, in the 80s, actors enunciated more. Sorry, there's a little heart next to my thing that blocks some of the uh, some of what you type. Um, yes, I think you could say that. Yeah. I mean, I think that movies have become lazier, so I just think there's less dialogue in movies now than there used to be in the past. I think it's more like look at the movies now. It's just explosions, boom, boom, bang, bang, crap like that. No, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily the 80s. Now, if you want to talk about enunciation and stuff like that, Star Trek and William Shatner. Just watch. Hi, my name is William Shatner. And like you will see that William Shatner, proud McGill graduate, like myself. So yeah, so that's something that I think's very uh it's I would say that that's more the 60s, the 70s about where it changed. If you look at old movies from the 30s, 40s, 50s, Jimmy Stewart, from example, from he was a very famous actor from the 30s, 40s, 50s. I think he might have tapered off around the 60s. But he had the accent like this. He talked like this all the time. And it doesn't sound normal, but you hear that in a lot of old movies. All right, so I did this a lot longer than I thought I was going to do, but let me know. This was my first like experiment. Let me know if this is something that you'd like me to do. I got to record some videos now, but thank you all very much. I will see you the next time. I'm trying to determine if I'm going to do this every week, every month, every whatever. I don't know. If you do want to take lessons, just go to my website and I'll help you out. But yeah, I kind of want to do this to move away from have some things that are just not the video edited video where I repeat a sentence 3 or 4 times and then take one and have it a cut. I wanted to just kind of have like a conversation type of thing. All right. All right. Well, I'll see you all later. Have a wonderful day wherever it is you are. And see, I say that at the end of every video. Talk to you later. Bye bye.